attack, fast fatal heart impact, past painful scars. In fact, I blast tasteful bars and packs. I back up my actions, fact don't ask, grab reactions, jacked attack with every word, then act with class as they hear me snap. I got nothing to lose, cause I fought and felt the bruise. Now I'm not the one confused, call the shots and they produce. I ain't lost, I'm finally loose, pick a new silver excuse. I need the views to boost me to a new abuse of being used. Everybody wants a piece now, y'all can rest in peace now. You're dead to me, so peace out. Remember, you're discreet now. Get ready for defeat now.
Alrighty. Hello everybody. This is Kirusho here, and it has been roughly about 7 months into the training with Almight. Now, Almight is still puzzled about his little idea, who to give this quirk down to. He does see Denki as a valuable candidate, and in fact she is the most straightforward candidate that he can think of, other than Yaoyorozu, without negatively affecting her quirk. Then there is the two twins. They are both Endeavor's sons. If he gives a quirk to one of them, and all of a sudden that they have it, Endeavor would get suspicious. In fact, it's quite a surprise that already that Endeavor lets his two sons out to train every single day. Then again, he is a pro, so he is very busy. So, the fact that they've actually been able to get away with it for this long is a surprise. Now, it has been roughly 1 week since Denki has learned to float with the metallic disc, using magnetism to manipulate metallic objects. Using electricity to create magnetism, My bad. Now, with that being said, Momo, after a bit of deconstructing and trying to put together in her head, she was able to actually make a metal disc, flat, that Denki can try and use. The thing is a bit on the thick side, but it should work. And she began to try and use it, as you do have her currently. Right now she is standing on the disc in the air, and she is currently moving forwards. As she is doing so, she is currently trying to at least get better at this. Her feet are on the disc, and she is trying to fire off at targets that are pointed out in the sand. Midori constructed targets on the ground that she is shooting at, and every now and again, Midori's task is to switch off, destroy the sand, and create new targets around. Then she just have to try and hit with electricity. Now, as Midori is focusing on doing that, here is what he is currently doing. He is trying to dodge and actually get away from Yaoyorozu, who is actually firing off random things about her quirk. Right now what she is doing is she's creating random things out of the palm of her hand and throwing force out with them, meaning that as soon as they come out of her hand, the momentum of them being pushed out of her skin all at once also does send them flying. Basically somewhat like an air cannon. Now, Yaoyorozu is simply just making, let's say at least, softballs, or weighted balls, to chuck at Midori. Midori is dodging them while trying to create targets. Along with that, he is also in charge of making sure that none of them touch the ground. This already is actually somewhat difficult, but you do have Todoroki. Right now he is working on an idea. He is currently meditating, and he does feel something. There is something going on in his body, and as he does take a deep breath in, you do actually see him. If this was a normal day, you'd probably think that he's in a lot of trouble. However, since this is the age of quirks, not a lot of people would probably think anything of it. Since you do have Todoroki sitting on the beach with half of his body encased in ice, and the other half encased in fire. So, roughly about 30 minutes go by, And after some time, Todoroki actually does try and move, stand up, being able to. However, he's finally been able to actually gain enough focus. And it distracts Midoriya, as soon as he does turn his head and see his brother. For 1 second, he saw Todoroki actually, with his right hand, create a fireball. And that did shock him. As soon as he turned to look at that, and he was surprised, he got hit in the face with a ball. Dropped the rest of them, and Denki, she missed the target since it went back into the sands. Now, Almight did actually seem a bit confused. And then Todoroki did come running up, a bit happy and excited, stating that he was able to do it. For 1 second, he had it. Did anyone see? Midori basically high-fiving his brother, telling him that he's one step closer to actually getting better control. Well, yeah, it's just that this is awesome. Wait, so young Todoroki, you're getting better? Yes, All Might. I think it's, well, a mix of things. My mentality and my training. I'm trying to think of the quirk as an extension of myself. And I'm trying to think of it more as my brother's. I'm trying to get the quirks to switch around. Or at least do what his can. I see. Using them with both hands, correct? Yeah, that's it. Alright, well. This is actually starting to be a bit more challenging. Now, the All Might saying that young Todoroki's, young Denki, and young Yaoyorozu, he has something special to announce. Now, all of them are on their toes, and simply just waiting for what All Might is about to say. All Might going on to state that these young men right here, both their quirks are actually very useful, and the way they are currently progressing shows exactly what type of heroes they will be. In fact, he believes that one day both of them could be in the top 10. Both of them just looking at each other for 1 second. Could be. Could be? They're definitely going to try and make it into the top 10. Nothing can stop them. Then he goes on seeing that young Yaoyorozu. She is a remarkable person. Her intelligence is very clear-cut and shown very well. And that, sadly, what he's about to announce would actually somewhat make her quirk obsolete. Her going from at least a bit more happy and cheery to a bit more, huh? And then you do have Denki. She's a bit more on her toes, as All Might announces that young Denki. She has made great strides in her progression with her own quirk, and he would hate to do this to her. But he does have an offer. Now, since all of them have been trained together, he believes that it is only right for all of them to know this secret. As he goes on to state that all of them are probably wondering what his quirk is. All of them somewhat just poking back up. As Midoriya, actually someone just shouts out, wind pressure, wind pressure, wind pressure. And All Might, after telling him to simply just give him a minute, he goes on explaining one for all what it can do and how it affects his body, saying that it's a strength enhancement quirk, and that after generations of it being passed down, he believes that the quirk is beginning to reach a certain point. Explaining to Denki that he can give her his quirk, and that it is actually a quirk enhancing quirk. Explaining to her exactly what will happen if he gives her the ability. And she does actually look to her left, Momo, who can understand why All Might is a bit more concerned about her taking it on, telling Denki that she should actually just go ahead and make her own choice. She won't feel bad about it. Her then looking over at Midoriya, or, in this case, the Todorokis, thinking that they'll give her some advice. And you do have Todoroki who is trying to stare down at his hands, trying to think. A quirk enhancing quirk. A enhanced ability. If it's a power that's been growing and getting stronger over the generations, and 7 other people have had that quirk before All Might, then that means that their father would have been the strongest man on Earth if All Might had never gotten that ability. They practically owe their existence alone to that quirk. And you do have Midoriya, whose thought process on the exact opposite spectrum of Todoroki's. A quirk that isn't even what he thought it was. All Might is literally just brute forcing his way into manipulating wind. That is cool, yeah, but he likes the way he uses his quirk better. It makes a lot more sense. All Might, he can only directly impact the wind and make it go in a certain direction. Midoriya could use that against All Might if he wanted to in a fight. I can beat All Might using his own strategy. It makes sense. Perfect. So if I ever do fight All Might, keep a note. Wind pressure is his weakness. Now, with that being said, Denki, she is nervous. That being very clear on her face. And for those of you wondering, this is the original picture. Ignore the fact that it was taken at 5 in the morning. Now, with that being said, it's very weird to see a male Jiro. Anyways, sorry. With that being said, she actually does somewhat accept All Might's offer. Asking exactly how would this work, though? Does he just, shake her hand, or what does she do? And, well, one awkward scene later of All Might plucking out a hair, and everyone around her laughing, and, well, it not going down so easy, she has one for all. And let us cut to roughly around 2 months later. She is better trained, and somewhat more in tune with trying to use the quirk. As soon as she turned it on, she had grave difficulties trying to simply just use the ability. And she did have to go to see Recovery Girl. And after that, she did try and use her own quirk. Her own quirk acted somewhat weird, basically having to somewhat retrain herself. And learning a bit more about how her new abilities are being affected through magnetism. Now, along with that, after these 2 months, Todoroki has learned to completely control both sides of his quirk at will. He can completely cover his body in flames, or ice, or go for the half-hot combo that his body is more used to. Since the flames, they do have somewhat of a greater impact on his ice side, since it naturally tries to be cold. However, after his body is able to sustain it for a while, it becomes manageable, since the intense heat and the intense cold would cancel each other out inside of his body, either making him absolute zero on the inside, or basically at least a normal human body temperature. I'm not too sure about how his quirk would affect the internal workings of his body, other than the burns and, well, severe frostbite. Now, with that being said, you also do have Midoriya. He has somewhat tried to guide Denki on how to use her quirk. However, it has not been easy. It's been somewhat difficult. he himself isn't too sure. They basically stuck to the whole concept of if she tries to use it again, try going low and alter her body, just like with her lightning. And she was able to actually use at least about, let's say about 3 to 4%. It is somewhat weird on her body, but it's a lot more manageable. After she does lower herself down to roughly about, let's say, 2%, it's a lot easier on her. It's just like how Midoriya's 5% works. However, then there is combat training, and trying to get used to the ability. They work on that for the last month. Then there is the entrance exam. Momo and everyone actually do take it and participate. Whenever they do walk in, they do actually hear. Now, they listen to President Mike's explanation about the robot points. The 1-pointers, the 2-pointers, and the 3-pointers, along with the 0-pointers. Explaining to all of them that it is like this. If they see a robot, destroy it, they will get a point. That is how they get villain points. And that is quite simply all they need to know. Now, they don't directly state villain points, however. They simply just said points, and that was quite surprising. Now, after they do all split up and go their own separate ways, Midori and Todoroki, both of them are put into a separate place, along with Momo. She goes to a separate, city. And Midoriya and Denki, surprise, surprise, they're at least roughly in the same area. They both do know that they're in the same city, as they do meet up and begin to talk. Now, Denki is actually asking Izuku if he is confident. And he does say that he is. Trying to walk through the crowd. Trying to basically drag Denki to the front, so as to allow her to possibly get some points early on. Now, as they are making their way through, eventually Ida does stop them, simply just asking Izuku, what is he doing with that young girl? Oh, we're trying to make our way to the front. Really? Pushing and shoving your way through? Can't you have some manners and say excuse me? Well, it's just that I don't want to hurt people with my quirk whenever I begin to use it. Really? Exactly what would your abilities be? Or, quirk. No, you're actually right. Abilities. What? I have a half and half quirk. In fact, so does my brother. And my friend here actually does have 2 quirks herself. Wait, so what does that mean? Well, I mean, her quirk I'm not too sure if you can classify it as 2. But what I mean is, my quirk is half wind, half earth. So you kinda gotta watch out. Okay. Well, at least calm down a bit, alright? Oh no, I can understand where you're coming from, man. It's alright. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, I think I should at least give people a head start. Midori asking Denki if she'll be alright. And she does actually say yeah. In fact, she'll just stick by him. Both of them just letting people run by them as soon as they do actually begin. Midoriya telling Denki that she's gonna want to hurry up then. And she does actually charge up with electricity. And begin to run in. Everyone watching her quickly pass by some of them. And then you do have Midoriya, who, after he does actually bring his hands over his head and smash them into the ground, he begins to pull his hands upwards. As he begins to actually start bringing the rock up and flying into the air. Now, people will watch as Midori overhead is flying with a piece of rock underneath his feet. And whenever he does acting to attack, he simply just pulls off pieces of the rock and sends them flying as spikes into robots. Everyone's somewhat surprised and shocked. As whenever Midori needs to, he directly flies a giant rock into a three-pointer, smashing it down before quickly just flying off with air pressure, and trying to simply just make sure he can stay in flight. Whenever the air currents try and move out from underneath him to get out of his way, he simply just moves them upwards. It's as if he is rolling on the ground. However, it's a bit differently than that. Meanwhile, you do have Denki. After she does actually run in and try and hit a robot, she's able to dent the metal. As soon as she's able to do that, she actually does begin to pull her hand out before grabbing a handful of wires and electrocuting them. As soon as that does happen, she actually does get onto the robot and begin to try and pull it apart. As soon as she is able to actually get a huge panel of it pulled apart, she begins to electrify underneath her feet. After taking off her shoes, she is able to stay on it, get it balanced before bringing her fingers together and actually somewhat swinging the robot's body around. And people do just watch that. As she moves through and begins to fire off with her fingers, energy, beams, hitting robots and frying some of them. And this actually is quite surprising. Two people are capable of flight with their quirks. That is actually pretty interesting. And you do have Ida, who is quite shocked. How is that possible? One guy can manipulation of rocks, and the other one is... How? Strength and flight? No, she's frying robots. Electricity. That... Ida trying to simply just get a hold of himself and run around and kick through robots. Now, with that being said, eventually the zero-pointer does actually arrive. And as these two are fighting through different robots, this is where it actually does make its presence known to Ochako. Her getting hit by a ton of rubble, and it landing on her. As soon as people do begin to run away, Midori does actually begin to leave. However, he does actually hear Ochako, and is quite surprised, going to run into that direction. As soon as he does, Denki actually does fly after him, unsure of what he's doing. However, she does actually begin to fire shots off at the zero-pointer, hoping that it could help with something, or at least fry some components in its chest. And it does not. However, whenever Midori does get there, he does one thing. He immediately just grabs onto the rocks and begins to simply just pull apart their bonds. As soon as he does, the entire heavy rocks, turn into coarse sand. And Midori is able to simply just pull her out. As soon as that does happen, Midori begins to try and make a pool of wind in his arm. Now, he's trying to do that so he can simply just put it forwards and blow them away. And there is the zero-pointer directly overhead. As soon as Midori is doing that and winding it up, the zero-pointer brings his leg up and goes to smash it downwards. However, Denki is basically using both of her hands and trying to hold it up its leg with her arms. She's blasting out electricity as much as she can, and she's almost at up to 500,000 volts. And you can see the sparks and electricity of one for all coming off of her as well. This is actually clearly having some effects on her body. And the robot's foot is trying to come down. However, it is doing so slowly. And as Midori is charging this up, he actually does do one thing, cocking his arm backwards and trying to throw it out forwards. As soon as he does that, he blasts the robot's leg up higher into the air, and Denki herself falls out of the air, smashing to the ground somewhat hurt and tired. Now, the robot then just jumps backwards and gets off of its foot, trying to bring its hand downwards to simply just grab these two. However, Midoriya, he does one thing. He simply does this with his left arm. He throws it out backwards and throws it forwards, a large pillar of earth directly smashing into the robot's hand. Before, Midoriya then actually just throws his hand down into the ground, and spikes begin to form, popping up more and more throughout the robot. As soon as he does that, he has both arms hit with spikes and parts of the body. That being perfect. And the robot does actually begin to fall forwards. As soon as it does, Midoriya actually just throws out his hands and try to stop it. Now, as the robot was falling, it stopped. Why did it stop? Now, this is whenever UA announces that the entrance exam is now over, and that anyone who is wounded must please come up to the front, or if you are unable to move, simply wait for their school aid. Now, Almight does actually come out and inspect everyone. This kind of surprising. Whenever Midori does actually ask about the robot and why it stopped, he does look down at his hands, thinking for a second, did he do that? Before Almight explains, the robot is an automatic system, and once they actually turn everything off, the robots stop moving. So, Midori is lucky that it was somewhat stable. In fact, pay attention there. Almight pointing out parts of the buildings, that the robot is basically stuck in between and wedged in between. If those pieces were not there, the robot would have fallen forwards, and he would have had to intervene. Now, after that is all said and done, Midoriya and Todoroki do actually go to leave. However, Ochako does actually try and meet them on the way out. And everyone is somewhat shocked and surprised whenever they do see two pro heroes standing there, waiting. You have the pro hero Endeavor, and then you have the pro hero Dobby. Or, I do believe I already gave him a hero name, but in all honesty, I forgot. Now, as these two are standing there, everyone does actually begin to somewhat freak out and surprised. Whenever Endeavor does walk up to these two and begin talking, as soon as both of them basically do say dad, everyone can understand. Endeavor's sons literally just took the entrance exam, and they obviously must have passed. Now, with that being said, Ochako actually does come running up and thank Midoriya for what he did. And Midoriya basically has to tell her that it's no problem. Now, with that being said, I do hope you guys enjoyed, and have an amazing night. Catch you guys in the next part.